And welcome everyone to Bob Dean's Field in Ōtautahi, Christchurch for the second day of the 2023 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships Division 1. We have a fantastic game ahead of you today between Marvellous DC Kudos on your screen at the moment, playing from the left to the right in the dark uniforms, facing off against their opponents Big from Wellington. As always, my name is Blair Monroe.
I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And what a privilege it is to be joined in the booth by Kelsey for this fantastic tournament and a fantastic game ahead of us. What are we going to see today?
What are we going to see? Thank you, Blair. A privilege also to be joined by the voice of New Zealand Ultimate himself. Blair, I'm really excited for this game. I think a lot of people across the New Zealand Ultimate community, the wider Motu, potentially internationally, this is such a massive matchup. Apologies in advance for all of the puns I'm trying to avoid as we're seeing the matchup, as Blair just mentioned, between Pig Ultimate, a massive matchup here, and Marvellous DC Kudos.
And it's quick 1-2s between Joseph Panaya and Nicholas Whitlock for an early score.
Halbin with the catch. What a way to start a game. You know, we're expecting high energy from this. These are teams with such depth in their rosters, such massive clubs. Big, a relatively new club, having founded themselves kind of off the backs of last year's club that was called Huripari, again, hailing from Wellington. But they have a lot of players, as I mentioned, a lot of depth. Players that have represented New Zealand internationally on the world stage, as well as leaders in their own community, leaders that have done a lot of development. Really great to see this team bringing together another powerhouse coming out of the Wellington region. What are we seeing with Marvellous DC Kudos here, Blair?
That is a great question, Kelsey. Just before we talk about Marvellous DC, I want to dedicate that point to Leon Halbin. I had a chat to Peter Halbin, a new dad, just before the game, and I said to him, yeah, first point of the game dedicated to Leon. What does he do? He goes and scores the damn thing. Great work by Big to put them up 1 over MDC Kudos. Speaking of MDC Kudos, so predominantly northern-based team, a lot of Auckland players, but they've picked up a lot of high-level players from other teams as well. A few years ago, we had Space Invaders headed by Meg Lake Armstrong and Billy Armstrong. Pulled a lot of teams together. We've seen that kind of splinter off. We saw Coral Huang and Ryan Smith pick up for Laminati. Rory Moore, a player for Laminati in previous years, has moved across the MDC side. It's a huge get for them as well. Great work on that far sideline. We've got Tessa Swinson.
And this is something I'm really excited for as well. To Ireland, Swinson, Ireland, joined by Fulton on the team here as well. Players from the women's in the women's division, a really up-and-coming young team, Misfits, coming out of Auckland, really making their mark on the national stage as well. Exciting to see them playing together in the mixed space here as well. Some great movement from Big as they're back on offense.
Yeah, that little pass going a tiny bit awry. Staley securing the block, getting involved, and we see one go back the other way, but it's not going to be enough to stop the Big Bomber, his final form. Working with Staley in the upfield space, a great high-release backhand, finding Zoe Reisner for the score.
What a point from Big, another one on the board. I just wanted to shout out, interesting to see that final play there. That high release backhand in the end zone, especially with so many people around, is an interesting decision. But when you know your receivers, when you have a receiver like Reisner, the athleticism, the height, can't teach that height. She's such a formidable opponent, not only in the handler space, but also obviously in the end zone there as she reels it in. Putting up a high release backhand like that, again, with the defense around, potentially a tricky decision, but when you have a receiver like that and trust in that throw, easy to reel it in and makes it look like, such solid decision making.
Just a fantastic point there. Altaf Ali too far behind to make a clean play, bails out, and Reisner pulls it down.
So quick comments on the day yesterday, especially in the morning. Teams were struggling with the conditions. We had some hefty wind. Christchurch wind. No doubt the Wellington teams are feeling quite at home. Also with some showers coming through. Now that's really mellowed out today. It's really beautiful conditions for Ultimate right now, overcast. So the sun's not in anyone's eyes. There are a few gusts of wind, but not really enough to play with the disc too much. Making it, hopefully cleaner plays we'll see today, but making it a bit easier in this match as well. Likely to see less zone, but maybe teams will be pulling it out of their back pocket later on in the game.
Lee with the disc now, making great fakes, shifting.
Now, Blair, this is really interesting. Marvellous DC are running a horizontal stack, it looks like, but they've got four handlers back in that space with maybe 3 with a super dump. Just a less common handler formation, but indicating potentially we expect to see great movements in that handler space if they have so many people back with that support.
Yeah, so a little bobble giving the turnover, but that 4-3 structure, having 3 players in the downfield, it indicates that you're trusting the cutters downfield as we see the big shot go up.
What vision. What a beautiful put there.
To Rebecca Lynch for the score for Big. 3 on the bounce, a hold, and 2 breaks. Fantastic work by the side from Wellington. Now, Big managed to come up to the Tamaki Throwdown, the Northern Region qualifying tournament, where they were pipped in the final by Marvellous DC Kudos. And so, as we've said a couple times, the hardest team to face, the hardest team to beat is one you've already beaten before. Marvellous DC, really fantastic roster, huge amount of depth, and I think, as we were saying, having those 4 handlers back and 3 downfield cutters, you're respecting the defense there. You know they're going to be putting pressure on the disc movement, so you're trying to maximize the amount of width you can have while trusting your downfield players. We saw Charles Patterson making a great undercut in that previous point, fresh off a campaign in the Asia-Oceania Beach Ultimate Championships, and just being able to see all of that space being used by fewer players, it means that it's going to be a lot smoother from a cutter's perspective. There's a lot less room, a lot less cramping. Just really, really good, pulling the defense out and giving those cutters a bit of room to work.
I just wanted to touch on bringing it back to the this point right now, the previous point especially, the vision on that throw that went around. Really challenging for, as a defender, to mark the break side when the throw was going over you on trailing into that break space. And great positioning from Lynch to reel that in. We've got Marvellous DC on offense right now. Disc with Yo.
Once again, Patterson making that big cut in, marked aggressively by Halbin. Finds Ireland, an absolute machine on that near sideline as Aston looks to close in. The reset goes across to Yo, pushing wide to Altaf Ali. Ben Waller providing support on the far side wing.
I'm really enjoying the energy that Marvellous DC are bringing to this game right now. We're seeing a lot of intention with all the cuts. A deep look goes up. And Halbin trails off. He sees the separation. He sees where the disc is going. Such a beautiful put deep. The massive put just reeled in. Such a safe, clean point to put Marvellous DC on the board.
And so the score is 3-1 in favor of the side from Wellington. But DC Kudos have proven that they're not going to let this one go without a fight. Charles Patterson wanting to be referred to by Chuck during this game, as he apparently had a streak of turnovers yesterday. We'll call him Chuck, but we're not going to call him Drop after reeling that one in. A great put there. Absolutely. Nice and long, well over the top of Halbin. Walked down, unmarked.
Yeah, just a great catch all around. And, you know, potentially getting out those niggles in the first day, best time to get them out. So you're catching everything definitely in a big game like this. Yeah, I wanted to comment on the energy also in that point. Marvellous DC, it's great to see all the cuts are so intentional. Players they're cutting all the way and they're clearing all the way out, as well as those deep looks. One thing that's a mark of a really well-drilled, strong team is that every possession, every catch, throw and catch, there's another deep look coming off of that. And we saw that cycling in and out of the deep space, an intentional deep look and then clearing out so someone could fill. So there's always multiple options for the thrower to throw to. We have
Titov Smith working with Whitlock in the upfield space. Ketty on a nice undercut towards that near side wing. Whitlock doesn't see it as an option. He goes Penaya across to Parsons.
DC also, it looks like coming out with a zone, or nope, they're matched now. But definitely some poaching in that space. Bender poaching under, but the disc goes deep. Titov Smith streaking deep, looking for
enough float.
And there's no need to make that any bigger than it needs to be. No need to lay out. No need to get to the ground. He's too fast, too furious. Chases the disc down. What an easy catch.
And when you've managed to flip the toss and you're playing in light uniforms, you want to try and avoid getting them dirty if you can. No gratuitous layouts on that great deep cut. Look at the separation there. My Godfather doesn't need to leave his feet. In fact, had to even slow down.
He did, yeah.
Didn't want to take that one in stride. Just having that moment to check the footwork, make sure he was in bounds. With the amount of separation that he had, he would have been holding the disc for maybe 2-3 seconds before any of his teammates had managed to catch up for that continuation pass. So he managed to just pop that one in. And great work.
Just a quick commentary. As a commentator, as a spectator of Ultimate Frisbee, it's really exciting as a teammate. When you're playing, layouts are exciting plays. They're big plays. They get everyone fired up, and they make it a really exciting sport to watch. However, a quick note that, as we know, if you're leaving your feet to catch a disc or make a defensive play, you're out of position. And the throw was bad, or you were out of position, and you're compensating to make up for it. While it's something we really like to see, big props to that last point, Titoff Smith, for not even needing to take off his feet to make that easy catch. We've got Marvellous DC on offense. Beautiful undercut.
By
nice
Charlesworth. Nice reset to Waller, pushing far sideline. Staley parking up to try and shut down Lee, but it's Patterson on the far sideline, marked by the long arms of the big bomber, but he manages to get around, find Waller Ireland there as a great support, super stable player on the field. Finds Swinson.
Great speed, and again, great speed on the field. We're seeing cuts set up with relative depth, but that's allowing players to set up really well. The disc goes deep to Swinson.
There's a lot of height underneath it. Whitlock probably definitely needed to be there. That one was a bit of a hospital case, but I honestly think DC would have come down with that one if not for his interference.
Holsters that huck.
He's unmarked now. Once again, we see Staley in support. Just great handler there. Finds Reisner near sideline as Charlesworth looks to close the gap.
And Staley, she's been commanding this handler space so well. She's just cleared out. But it's actually her first mixed championships. The huck goes up deep.
Looking for Theo Moore.
And it's interesting, Blair, we've seen so many hucks and a lot of points at this stage, potentially all but one. All but one have been scored off of hucks. So we're seeing, it's good to see defense have responded so quickly to that. The last huck that we saw go up in the deep space on the left side of your screen, there was triple coverage. Whitlock streaked in as well to clean that up for his team, but triple coverage from big, 3 white players to 1 Marvellous DC receiver. The exact same down the other end zone here. There were 3 Marvellous DC players for the 1 offensive player.
Charles Patterson slightly off balance. Manages to put that one up. The wind caught underneath it, and as the first contact point, I think he may have tried to tap it to one of his other players. Immediately closing that disappointment gap, but look at Zaria Ireland. Looks like we've had another turnover.
Ireland she wanted that disc deep. She was streaking deep for it. She's such a solid receiver. And
Whitlock shaking the pins and needles out of his hands on that block. Staley one more time.
Oh!
Huge touch by Yo.
Mammoth layout.
And again, when you're wearing a dark uniform, the dirt doesn't show nearly as well.
Right.
So if we see more great layouts like that from MDC, I'll be pretty happy. A great put. And just a fantastic cut by the big receiver to push towards that far sideline.
Yo, after the
Swinson
layout,
taking Lynch deep.
he picks up, centers to a safe middle part of the field.
Charlesworth resetting to Yo.
And just commenting on this, Blair, you just mentioned Swinson's streaking deep, but she's clearing out of that space as well. Marvellous DC doing such a good job at ensuring there's a deep look off of every throw, but also clearing out of that space to allow for someone else to do that.
Yeah, and having Waller with the disc on that far sideline before pushing back.
And she gets what she's been looking for.
That's what I wanted to see on that earlier pass. I mean, she had a couple steps on Lynch. She was still looking over her shoulder. She was tracking the throw, and Waller looked it off. She was there. She would have had it. And so just that patience, cycling back in, pulling Lynch just a little bit more shallow to widen up that gap again when Patterson had the disc on the sideline. There's Chuck Patterson. Puts it deep, and unsurprisingly, Tessa Swinson just boosting deep. That great foot speed. I mean, we've seen a lot from her in the youth. One of the funniest things, so her brother, Hugo Swinson, who has been playing for DMT, just another fantastic athlete. Both of them, they typically like to play out of the number 38 as a little nod to their home address. funniest thing you can do, and I've done this to Hugo Swinson, is just walk up and say, hey, you're Tessa Swinson's brother. Can I please have her autograph? And again, Tessa Swinson putting on a cutting clinic here for free for you, the folks watching at home. Huge thanks to ULTI.TV for allowing us to bring you the coverage of such masterful cutting by MDC Kudos to bring it back to a 2-point game.
And as I mentioned, former teammate, current teammate, Fulton with the pull. Another really strong player coming out of the youth scene, and as I mentioned, with Misfits, the women's team that they're also teammates on. Really great to see so much talent coming out of that space. The pull is out of bounds. We've got Big, the strong set of handlers walking up to the disc there, and Marvellous DC in a saggy zone, a loose zone. We've got 2 mids there. Interesting setup. We'll see how they try to cap this offense.
Terry is just an absolute corner of this offense right now, trailing behind just enough to allow those.
Titoff Smith wide open across fields.
Penaya finding Reisner, swinging across to Titoff Smith again. Boardman applying pressure on the mark. 2 cuts. I think Penaya cutting off Terry as a reset option.
What a beautiful point. You know, Blair, it was an interesting zone that Marvellous DC ran. It was a little bit difficult to tell how exactly they were setting it and what the strategy was, just due to the fact that the big handlers and mid cutters, there was so much movement. It was so fast. We can see, you know, when you put handlers like Penaya, Titoff Smith, Reisner, Staley, they have so much depth where it's a team of just flexible players, not just stuck in specific roles. But everyone here has so much depth, playing so many positions, which really is, I think, is a prime situation that shows that skill and that talent, that everyone is happy to, you know, cycle in and out of that space.
Just a huge, you want to give a huge shout out to Zoe Reisner there. Recognizing that when we had Penaya cutting back into that under space and then pushing for that upline, he got the around pass, managed to catch it just outside of the end zone, but his speed being respected by his opponents meant that both defenders tried to push into that front corner. Reisner respecting that, and just with the vision to say, hey, Joe's not going to pull this one in bounds, but I need to be available as reset. Didn't need to move for the score. And then that huge brain, she just bounced it off the disc and managed to put another one on the board for Big. We're going to see MDC now with Altaf Ali.
Handlers really giving the handler defense some space. We're not seeing tight handler marks here. Instead, the handler marks taking some space off to try to cover some downfield movements as well.
Ali cutting off that hucking lane. It's Waller on another undercut to find Van Bergen. Quickly calls a travel. They reset and begin to go back. Sheridan pressuring now against Yo. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that MDC zone. I want to draw attention to the way zone typically gets played, and one of the best ways to beat it is to have one of your handlers, those confident disc players, sagging off a few meters. It's okay to lose yards because a zone very rarely attacks deeper than the front yard or the line of scrimmage, I guess, the line across the field from where those handlers are. Charlesworth to Yo on the near sideline. She's pushing deep. A great cutter, but Staley is able to close that one down.
Yo holsters and throws upline to Waller, who's directing the field. He's looking to that break side space.
Ireland is pushing open on that wide sideline. Dinsdale closing that gap there. It's Patterson with the disc. And he's calling for it, looking for Ali. Comes down with it to bring it back to a 2-point game.
Beautiful. Also, I mean, we're following this common theme of shouting out to players who were maybe not directly involved in the play there. Charlesworth just holding space in the stack. I was struggling to tell, actually, in that point scored there, if that was an end zone play that they drilled or if that was just a cut out of the stack. Regardless, we see a few people, just that stagnancy in the middle of the field. Great catch with the offhand as well. But the space that people were saving in the middle of the field, forming the semblance of a vertical stack and creating space for their co-players and teammates to, find the space to get open and score the point.
Yeah, it looked like targeting that break side. Theo Moore a great player in his own right, probably not likely to be out of position on the open side. So Ollie getting that separation, trusting those handlers, Patterson, Yo in particular on those last couple of strings, where they were able to get those break throws around the defense. And it's one of those hard things too, when you're playing defense and you're that close to your defensive end zone, you want to shade a little bit more in front of the thrower, because the last thing you want is a really aggressive lateral mark that opens up a big channel in front of the player.
Really great speed. I've been appreciating that from Marvellous DC. They're bringing so much energy and speed to this game. So now it's a matter of, I mean, big, they're coming out on offense, but to match that and maintain that pressure against it. I feel like Marvellous DC settling into the game a little bit more. We're seeing another zone that they're putting on the handlers now.
They're parking Owen Sun up in the deep space. Very, very tall, quite speedy in his own right.
This is,
we're going to see what work Big want to do to move the disc around this one.
It definitely... Panaya, Titov, Smith, Sheridan's happy space. They love being in a situation like this. You know, I can say definitely Panaya is pleased that the zone is being thrown right now. Such depth again in the handler space for Big. To be able to unlock, they're slowly figuring out chipping away at this cup. We've got a chase with a massive wall.
Boardman now applying pressure to Panaya directly.
He's looking for the continuations, can't find it.
Comes around to Big's AUDL pro, Ryan Sheridan for the Austin Soul.
Oh! And again, Blair, maybe if Titov Smith had slowed down a little bit, he attacked that disc, which is what you generally want to do in Ultimate Frisbee. You want to attack the disc to ensure that the defense has no play on it. It looks like he came in a little too hot, though, and then couldn't quite reel it in.
If nothing else, it would have been a great defensive play. Generating the turnover, unfortunately, for the other team. And so we're going to have Rory Moore to pick up and initiate. We see Chang streaking deep, covered by Terry and Reisner in the deep space as well.
A hard no around mark. A great inside out, though. Oh, it looks like a potential injury.
I think Bender trying to step around the long wings of O'Connor. Looks like a foul has been accepted. It's maybe bumped into her there.
Yeah.
But again, just speaks to the really intense defense that's being applied here. We've got Anna Dolan.
And what great breaks. We've seen 2 in a row now back to the open side, but we saw an inside out and around. So this is indicative for the defense, big defense to see. Oh, it looks like there's a marking infraction, potential contact on the disc. Yeah. But in the mark, you know, if the team that you're marking against is throwing consistently those inside-out passes as well as the arounds to make the breaks, it makes it much more challenging to mark. You need to break it down by player instead of what the team is looking for or a strategy they're sticking to. It's showing a lot of depth in the throwers that they have multiple ways to break a mark. And, putting a lot of pressure on the marks that Big is putting on to stop so many of those options, both the insides and the arounds.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to the downfield defense as well. I think particularly we saw Rory Moore trying to initiate, but Jack Keddy, probably fresh off his job as an art historian, because he was not buying those fakes.
What?
Titov Smith with a great intercept to Sheridan. And a pick has been called. So
potentially another, I'm sorry to say it, but for the Harry Potter fans out there, Titov Smith potentially another alumni and student under Professor Trelawney, just with divination skills, reading the future, knowing exactly where he needs to be to intercept that play so fast. Disc in the hands of Sheridan.
Somewhere between flying disc and scrying disc. And while we may have Keddy working as an art historian, we've got Ryan Sheridan about to get tried for art fraud because he sold those fakes to Peter Boardman, getting a big layout, managing to chip 2 passes across the wide sideline to find O'Connor for a fantastic score.
And I love the communication between Reisner and O'Connor there. I feel like there were multiple options. We had Panaya looking for the swing there, or looking for a potential strike. There was Reisner cutting out of the stack and O'Connor. Great comms downfield. Look, there were 3 options streaking to the open side, leaving it to O'Connor as a safe catch. It was easiest. I think Reisner would have had to put on the gas a little bit more to be able to catch up with that. But beautiful to see, that with the thrower, there's 3 potential options that Sheridan could have put to. And also really lovely trust across the teammates to decide who's going to get that stat point to put on the board.
Speaking of trust, a huge thanks to one of our sponsors, the New Zealand Community Trust, who really helped us bring this tournament together to bring you the coverage, the very best sport in all the world, with the best athletes in the country here at Bob Dean's Field. The score is 6-3 in favor of the side from Wellington.
I feel like Marvellous DC is still settling into the game. They've had some beautiful possessions. When the disc is in their hands right now, I'm hoping to see another one with them on offense. They're really good at maintaining possession, at bringing speed and energy to their cutting. Really well-drilled stacks. So I feel like they're still kind of settling into that, and hoping to see another points as we've seen in the past, just with some of that beautiful flow and energy.
Ireland pushing into a deep cut. Waller wanted to send the huck up for it. It's not going to come. Swings back to Lee on the near side, marked by Reisner. Big fakes around to Yo. Huge bid there, but it's
finding Swinson. Is going for number 2.
Yes, she is. Ah, Swinson.
That's the exact same play we saw last time.
Yeah, I mean, Waller gets the disc, holsters the huck, resets, and then someone else decides to send it deep for Tessa Swinson. I mean, really, when you've got that level of foot speed, that level of aggression, that athleticism, it's such a hard target not to shoot for. And
props to the bid on the disc. And the coverage, great defensive work, but yeah, it's tough to stop the machine this big machine that's out on the field. You know, Marvellous DC just racking up another one.
And that's the tough thing, because when you've got a cutter like Tessa Swinson, you almost want to peel someone off their assignment and just try and shut her down from both directions. But the problem there, the moment you do that, you've got another player who's unmarked. And with the depth that we're seeing on this Kudos roster, you can't really afford to leave someone unmarked.
Can't do that. I think it would be prudent for Big to recognize that threat. That's, again, the second point that Marvellous DC has scored for the 2 last points they've scored, where Swinson has streaked deep, and they've put up a beautiful huck for her to run onto. So just it would be good for Big to recognize that, and potentially they could, recognize, maybe do some bracketing on the field, or just ensure that that's covered. Regardless, we've got Big on offense now.
Halbin and Whitlock. It was a great pull by Kat Fulton, pushing all the way down the field. Reisner over Dolan. Finds O'Connor on the far sideline. Not going to be able to get that one to hands.
Drop. She's such an athletic player, streaking across. It looks like they were set up in a bit of a side stack, giving her so much space to create that. And maybe just cold fingers.
Yeah, this early in the game, it does make it a little bit tough to just get dialed in, even with a good warm-up when it's early in the morning.
Dolan with a beautiful wide catch.
To Chang. Marked by Lynch. Puts a high one up to Kat Fulton as Parsons seeks to close. Finds Mace. Mace pressured heavily by O'Connor. Has to go backwards to Boardman.
Hard pressure from Halbin on the handler mark there.
Boardman somehow right-handed, throwing with his left. Manages to find Fulton on a great far side cut, but there's a call that's been made, another pick. So for those who are watching at home, a pick occurs, as Ultimate is a non-contact sport, a pick occurs when a defender's ability to follow their offensive counterpart is impeded by the movement or positioning of another player. If contact is forced or to try and avoid contact, you have to let your player go, and you could have reasonably followed them, then that would be a pick, and play is resumed when players catch up to where they feel they reasonably would have been. Parsons very aggressive on that mark.
We're seeing really hard handler marks from Big, really close, tight marks, covering the dancing, which is leading to a bit more dancing in the Marvellous DC space. As they're struggling to engage the dumps, the resets, and then get open. We see Halbin with the face mark. He had him shut down at the same time. It's dangerous to face mark your player in such a situation like that right in the end zone, leading to an easy handler-initiated throw. Again, as the defender, if you have your eyes on the person you're marking instead of on the disc, it can be hard to make a play on the disc if you're not sure where it is.
Absolutely. It's one of those tough things. We see a timeout's going to be called there. I'm not sure who initiated that one, but Big, having let MDC Kudos get a few on the bounce, they're probably going to want to shut down that momentum. Yeah, Halbin is a great defender, and there's a lot of trust there. But as you say, I mean, I think really one of the best defenders in Ultimate would probably have to be Bill Skarsgård, the guy who can turn his eyes in both directions. Just to keep one on the disc and one on the handler, because the moment you give up one, that's where the other one goes. If you keep your eye on the disc and you let your defender or your oppositional player sit behind you, you're not going to know when they've targeted your blind spot. And the flip side is that when you target that handler, you're not going to know where the throw's coming to. A throw with enough space, enough float on it, it means the handler's going to be able to get to it. So great work there by both teams. The score is 6-5 in a game to 15. We will be back with you very soon.
We believe mixed is the best for the sport, for the world. That's why we're making a global showcase, starting in Europe, made in Amsterdam. ULTI.TV. ULTI.net.
And so we are back. Now, Kelsey, those two timeouts, what do you think those teams were talking about during that moment? What was the purpose of the timeout?
Thank you for asking, Blair. I think it was a really interesting strategic timeout. So Marvellous DC has just scored 2 points in a row as they're taking the field. And I think big coach Mike Bogatsky was just recognizing that. I mean, 2 points is not a lot, 2 is a small number. But Bogatsky just recognizing the risk of Marvellous DC picking up potential momentum and carrying them through a few more points. So I think he was trying to interrupt that by calling a timeout, bringing the team together. There was a very short huddle. They didn't chat for much time, which just, I think, shows that they were discussing, hey, we're just throwing a wrench in that momentum. We're taking a quick pause. This is our game. Let's reset and play the game we know how to play.
We are seeing that MDC zone come out again. Whitlock pushing for a deep cut.
Ireland had that covered.
Ireland did have that covered. She's almost unstoppable in the deep space. A great grab for
Whitlock
Kudos.
as a receiver. That was just such an incredible matchup. A great offense, great defense. Such a good matchup on that deep look.
That's one of my favorite things, too, is to see a player like Owen Sun getting beaten deep by Nick Whitlock, and Zaria Ireland just thinking, nah, I've got this. The throw turns over a little early, and Terry secures it, providing support for Whitlock, who's going to send something up and over the top to Reisner. Again, Terry, who's just been super stable in that handler space. A great reset option. She's going to get the read. And the layout, but it's not going to be enough.
Marvellous DC again with the disc, and we've got deep looks right off the bat.
Rory Moore, he's got big throws. Drops back to Peter Boardman, who somehow, against all odds again, is right-handed, playing with his left. It's Ireland, marked by Reisner. That's actually a matchup I'd really like to see, I think. Fulton around Terry to Boardman, and a pick has been called again.
Yeah, so Marvellous DC is running a vertical stack right now, it looks like. And there has been a lot of movement cuts from the middle. A little bit messy, which leads to potential risk for picks. The disc goes up, Panay racing to try to cover, but he can't get there in time. Such great separation and positioning with the throw.
Yeah, I mean, the pick didn't affect the play. Zaria Ireland was able to pick up and initiate straight away. Just getting that nice long backhand up the field for Charles Patterson. Another great cut from him. It's funny you said 2 is a small number, but I think 2 is the number of points Tessa Swinson has scored. 2 is the number of points that Charles Patterson has scored. Just huge plays from DC Kudos to tie up the game. Big with 3 up at the start. It's important to remember. But the later stages of the first half have definitely belonged to MDC Kudos.
I'm so stoked. I was asking for this. I'm really happy that Marvellous DC was listening. I was feeling like they just weren't quite settled into the game. They weren't settled into their rhythm. They're bringing the speed, the energy, the under looks, the deep looks, just so many options for their handlers or the people with the disc to pass to. And it's really exciting to see that they're picking that up a little bit more. We're seeing them dancing a little bit, bringing their energy and making it their own game. Meanwhile, again, it's up to Big to recognize that, put a stopper on that energy. They've also similarly been doing such a great job with offering multiple options in that last point. That Reisner, Panaya ended up just passing it on to just so many options in that deep space. So yeah, definitely up to Big to kind of put a stopper in this momentum that Marvellous DC is bringing to the field. I expect to see out of this. Definitely more big looks, pardon me, towering mammoth giant looks. As we've seen quite a few of the points being scored off those deep pucks, I'm wondering if defense on both teams will start shutting that down. Both teams are also more than capable of quick give and goes, of shorter passes, and having really great flow into the end zone. So we'll see. What are your thoughts, Blair?
I mean, let's bust out some of the old faithfuls. It's anybody's game. I mean, you could look at either of these teams in isolation and pinpoint 100 strengths. In fact, if anyone has homework and wants to do that.
That's a small number, Blair. I'd say 200.
200. Yeah, well, one is the loneliest number. But you could easily look at these teams in isolation and look at connections. You could look at strengths, jumps, how they run, all of these different elements. And to see these teams clashing it's a huge benefit for anyone with the opportunity to watch.
Marvellous DC coming down with a person match defense.
Now, what's interesting there is that we had Bender doing her job. She was absolutely fantastic. She was in that far side lane. She was clogging a player. We had Ireland deep on the defense.
That might be actually the bracketing in play. I've been wondering about that poach. They've consistently had that one player poaching under. It's commonly been Bender, and she may have had that counterpart in this case, potentially Ireland in the deep space, bracketing and preventing those unders. Really successful defense there.
Hugely, and it's going to be Bender to Dolan, marked by Parsons. Boardman available there for the reset.
And Marvellous DC showing the consistency with their ability to break the mark, swing upfield.
DC doing a great job of just those changes of direction.
Switching mark, it looks like. I thought they were forcing home, but it looks like the mark is switching.
Huge shot.
The inside out pops up, had a little too much power behind it. That's
Patterson
a challenge with inside out
not gonna
flicks.
be able to reel that one in.
Yeah, it's hard to put a softness and the touch without the power behind it. And there's a little bit of a tailwind at the back of that throw, which is pushed
Two players cutting deep. Halbin and Reisner both pushing deep, but the huck gets holstered.
And you know, Blair, I think I'll eat my words. I think they are bracketing. The women are bracketing here. Bender and Ireland covering the unders and the deeps, and that's a really smart strategy.
They absolutely are. You could see a little bit further downfield. Ireland was pushing, signaling with the hands just for where those calls are coming, but it's let go. Kwok having to drop off to cover O'Connor. And just absolutely getting put through the blender.
O'Connor had such a fantastic point there. That backhand huck that she put up, the static, she was standing there, so much power behind it, followed by racing down the field to provide she provides essentially the assist. She throws the huck and then scores the point, setting herself up, really setting the team up for scoring the point. What a fantastic play. What
it all comes down to is the fact that every player on this field is a huge threat, and they have to be respected. And it's important to remember, hey, the player with the disc outside the end zone is not the one who's going to score the point. They're not the ones who need to be shut down. Stick to the downfield player and stay tight with them. So we can see here, Kwok tried to put a mark on, should have immediately tried to cover that deep. Lost eyes on O'Connor for a fraction of a second, and that's the only gap she needs.
Throwing it. She was just throw and go. She's such an athletic player. So just zooming downfield, I mean, it goes to show also, even though you might be covering a thrower, a handler, or someone who just threw the disc, that as soon as the disc is out of their hands, obviously they can move. And if you're not respecting that first step, that initiation and the initiative of a thrower like O'Connor there, she'll be off to the races and scoring the point.
Absolutely. And so on pulling duties after that great score is O'Connor, putting it nice and high and long to be fielded early by Lee.
Oh, really great pull there.
Great work by Jackson Joel to try and shut down that first pass. Manages it. Super aggressive on the mark. Yo getting a little bit stuck, but can find Charlesworth in center field. Pushing to the wide sideline, far side.
Give and go, wall pass. Oh, she fires deep. A bit too much power behind that throw.
Yeah, Ali probably not pushing aggressively enough for that deep cut. For that to be an option, maybe a little bit of miscomms there. It's going to give the disc back to Big. Joel cutting, great pressure, working deep.
Great catch.
Booth managing to come back underneath.
Oh, what is this uncharacteristic kind of miscommunication baubles, really from both teams with that deep look and then the bauble there from Big as well. Hands back in the disc of Marvellous DC, so they'll get another chance.
Right on the doorstep as well. It's one pass. Is it Ireland? No. Somehow, not the best option for a change. It's going to be Charlesworth instead.
She takes to the knees to ensure that disc is safe. A great point, and interesting, we've seen a little bit of this from Big as it looks like they're switching the mark. Again, I'm sure it's intentional. With a team this well drilled, they're spreading the sidelines. I think they might be switching home in a way. There's advantage to this in that...
Just want to draw attention as well to Becca Aston. I mean, Zaria Ireland in the end zone is all but guaranteed to score, and yet Aston shut her down with very little trouble. Amazing to see. Just had to, the DC handlers had to look away and find something else. And O'Connor nearly taking a bite out of that one as well.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, Charlesworth still managing to walk away with it to bring it back to a tied game.
Anyway, back to these marks. We'll see what's happening now. We've got Big coming out on offense, but if they do play defense, they've been switching that, and that can be quite difficult when you're playing offense against a switching mark, one that's forcing one way, and then the next pass is forcing the other way. It makes it difficult to make continuation cuts off of that and continue the flow. It also makes it difficult as a thrower, especially if the force is middle. It stops. We tend to see throws coming down the sidelines, so it really puts a damper on a lot of those deep options. Regardless, we've got Big on offense right now. A strong handler set, Whitlock, Keddy, and Panaya just clearing out.
Those great upline cuts really selling the defense.
And see the space in the middle of the field here. There's a big gap, a lot of space for players to set up really big, massive cuts coming under.
Goes over the top for Panaya.
What a great around throw from Panaya. Looks like there was a pick on the field.
Looks like Owen Sun maybe tried to run through Zoe Reisner, always a mistake. So he'll be given the opportunity to catch up with Whitlock. Keddy with Panaya. We're seeing a kind of side stack almost. It's folding. It's a little more flexible in terms of the downfield offense. Keddy taking a few steps too many, but Boardman is going to shut him down anyway. It's Whitlock on an upline marked by Sun.
He launches looking for Panaya deep. Can he get there? Looks
no,
like it
he
out of
can't.
Also.
Oh, no, I think a touchdown just inbounds. Just looking right there in front of that corner in the top left of your screen, you can see that it just touched inbounds. I think he may have tripped. Doesn't look like it was any contact there. Patterson was following close but kept it clean, which is really, really good to see.
What a matchup. We've seen so much athleticism from Patterson and Panaya. I love that coverage, actually, this matchup just now. You can say that about both teams. As Blair has mentioned excessively, that they have such depth on both teams. And really, yeah, exciting to see them matched up as teams as well as the individual matchups on the field.
Risha Chang
right off
going
the bat.
aggressive on that cut from the back of the MDC stack. Terry spinning around, getting involved to stop it, but leaving Chang unmarked on that far sideline as Fulton puts a great line drive up. The question is whether or not it's going to be in. It's going to be signaled in, I think. Big signaling it in, which is a great display of spirit here.
Yeah, and also, of course, in Ultimate, really good to double check sometimes. If you're unsure about a call, let's see that one more time.
Great
as she catches
upline.
it, then maybe just rolls out of bounds. But good to just double check if you think that there may have been a violation of the rules, as we're seeing now. Good to, just check in and chat with the team. You can always retract a call. In this situation, just check in if she was out of bounds, she was in. Smiles all around. Great to see.
Look at that smile. Cut it out. It's Galaxy Point. The next team to score is going to take half. And Risha Chang is just hanging out, having a good time with her buds. As Ireland gets around Reisner for Mace, marked by O'Connor.
Just keeping this theme that we've seen with Marvellous DC, just threatening all of those break options. Some incredible rounds.
One thing that I'm seeing a lot of. Oh, beautiful 1-2 bounce up the field off Fulton for Ireland.
And really exciting today to see that diversity of throws. Again, with the wind died down a little bit, so many more pop passes coming out. So much cheeky diversity and creativity.
Puts the hook up looking for Chang. Whitlock in hot pursuit. Same with Owen Sun. Whitlock making a less than clean bid on that one.
It looks like Chang was sandwiched between both players. I hope it's just a minor bump.
That read, he definitely, they both came up, and there was definitely hip-to-shoulder contact from Whitlock. Now, it's important to recognize in the context of a game of Ultimate that a player is entitled to the space above their head. So just how tightly both Whitlock and Sun closed in over Chang's shoulders, I wouldn't call that the most considerate play by either of those players.
No, it is good to see she's walking off the field. Hopefully just to take a breather, take some water. But great to see that she's walking just fine.
With Bender taking the substitution for Chang, we're also going to see Jack Keddy take a break in favor of Peter Halbin.
Huge break from Whitlock. It's too low to the ground, and Reisner can't clean it up. Uncharacteristic.
Looking on his face, I think that the collision there with Chang's probably hanging on him a little bit.
That's a good point.
And again, he's a nice guy. You do something like that, you're going to feel a little bit bad, and it's going to affect the next few plays. Ireland on a great sail. Oh, my God, Father. The throw was good, but that wouldn't have happened without the cut. Chips one across to Fulton for the score.
Also, that throw, that inside out around. Yeah, what a throw to Ireland.
We've got to see that again. What a cut. Just an absolute garage sale. Everything must go.
It's important in Ultimate. There's options that we take. Some options are easier. We're more likely to convert it into a catch or a point. Other options may be more challenging. But when you have throws like that, it just opens up the field to you. It opens up the options, and all of a sudden, despite the mark, despite the wind or the trickiness of the throw, or where your player, in this case Ireland, might be, if you have the throw and it comes off so beautifully like that, what a gorgeous point.
I want to see that again.
Oh, the unfortunate turf there.
And it's going to be Boardman who picks that one up.
I think a great decision, though. There was so much separation, and Reisner's such a great receiver.
Look at that. What a cut. Big fakes. Fulton curving around. Oh.
Again, that throw, the incredible throw. And we've got Ireland just waiting for the open option before she found Fulton in the end zone. What a great connection to take away halftime.
And so that is going to be the end of our first half in this game to 15, the 2023 Division 1 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships. Big and Marvellous DC Kudos butting heads. Who is going to come away at the end of this clash? Between two mighty titans. We will see very, very shortly. Until then, my name is Blair Monroe.
I'm Kelsey Bielik.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back very, very soon. Do not look away. Welcome back, folks, to the second half of this exciting first game for the second day of the 2023 Division 1 Mixed Ultimate Championships at Bob Dean Field in Ōtautahi, Christchurch. My name, as always, is Blair Munro. I'm joined in the booth by the... I need to think of more adjectives. Kelsey, you truly are beyond words. Thank you so much for joining me in the booth today. How do you feel about the first half of this game?
I'm stoked, and it was something that I was really trying to keep contained, actually, towards the end of the first half, beginning of the second half now. Look at the score, team. We're seeing 7-8, Kudos up. And I want to bring us back just as a quick recap to the beginning of the game. When Big was up, Marvellous DC have really found their flow. They found their connections. They're really capitalizing on the deep space and showing the depth and speed of the team. Yeah, it's an incredible matchup, Blair.
Just to add a little bit of context and perspective there, as we see Yo, Waller, and Ali initiating the handler offense with Patterson for DC Kudos. The score was, at one point, great knee slide there to pull that one off the turf, reset to Charlesworth, back to Ireland. Big fake trying to shift Aston. The score was, at one point, 6-3 in favor of Big. And now MDC Kudos up by 1. So they really are putting in that grit and that grind. A huge shift here from DC Kudos in the first half. The possession is going to go to Big. We're going to see Whitlock and Staley to initiate.
Showing strong mental resilience also, showing that Staley chasing it down, going for the one-handed catch there too may have been safer, but Marvellous DC off to the races, picking up immediately and ready to go.
Patterson to Swinson, near sideline, marked by the aggressive Reisner, has to go back and around to Charlesworth, back to Patterson, nothing developing on that far sideline, he has to go wide to Yo instead. Is it going to be Waller? Yes, it is!
Beautiful point. It was interesting to see there, the stack was a bit stagnant. Where with Big, we've seen so many cuts and options in the end zone. There was a lot of waiting there. It was almost as if it was a bit unclear regarding who should be making the cut, who was initiating. It looked like they were just making space for the handlers, which is how Waller ended up scoring that point with the give and go. Oh, Patterson, sorry, with the disc.
Now, once again, it's just that vision too. Waller was clearly expecting that reset when he took those first 2 steps under, and then all of a sudden saw the disc wasn't going for him. And rather than deciding to commit and try and make a play for it, which is how turnovers happen, because quite often that reset throw is intended to be thrown outside the range of that middle handler, recognizing that, making a quick turn around and saying, hey, I'm the next option. What do I have to do? We saw a lot of that from Kent Wilcock in Hamilton Prime versus Laminati yesterday. Great work off the disc. But just some fantastic games have been on display, and this is definitely one of them. I know that might sound a little bit anticlimactic. It's hard to call this the best game we've seen. Every game is going to feel like the best one that we've seen. But it's Rory Moore, a phenomenal puller, putting the forehand roller up.
That's the first one.
Cut that out.
We've seen like that this tournament. Great to see that creativity and exactly where he wants it to be on the field. Look, they're on that slightly, ever so slightly downwind side, on the edge of the field, giving time for Big to set up.
Yeah,
oh,
DC
sorry,
with
Marvellous
a great zone
there.
It was Crosby and Fulton to initiate that defense. It's Lynch. A lot of pressure now. Manages to get past Boardman to Titov Smith. It's 24 on 24. A little bit of number-on-number violence, but he's able to get around. Finds Panaya. Boardman closing. Finds Titov Smith again. We've got Keddy pushing deep.
Ooh,
O'Connor able to get a great little upline drive to advance the disc for Big. Comes around to Panaya. Terry's available as a reset. She's going to get the disc. Using that height, but Fulton so quick on the mark. Goes back to Panaya as a center handler. We've got Titov Smith one more time.
Really solid defense from Marvellous DC right now. We see downfield, there's options happening. Players just working to get open. Haubin with triple coverage.
But a travel has been called.
Oh.
It's gonna come back.
Blair,
there's a lot of celebration.
I was glued on that catch. He's such a solid receiver, and also I think what makes him a solid receiver, obviously height, athleticism, but his ability to read the disc and get in position there. you know, there's so much coverage on defense that, you know, Marvellous DC had that fully covered. But let's check one more time here. Panaya with the throw.
So what had happened there is Panaya managing to shake loose, gave James Crosby the old shake and bake, but as he curved that cut through after receiving the disc, he took an extra couple of steps, and in addition to that change of direction, meant that Crosby was justified in making a call that Panaya's pivot point was not where it should be. He asked him to reset, but by that point the throw had gone off. We're going to see a huck go up anyway for Halbin. It's Moore who comes down with it, but there's going to be a question as to whether or not there was contact.
Owen just taking time to get up and discuss what he thinks happened.
They're going to call that as a strip. So that's going to be a point for Peter Halbin. We're going to see what happened there. They're both going to go up and grab it at the same time.
Oh,
that's the previous play. We might get the chance to see the repeat.
And you could see Panaya was just so stoked on that throw initially. He wanted to do a repeat, as you just said, a repeat of the throw with such a strong receiver, knowing that it's still going to be such a safe option despite the coverage so deep.
Big to bring it back within one. So just for those at home who may not know, a tie goes to the runner. The disc is going to favor offense. So when there's a situation where two players from opposing teams get contact with the disc and one of them pulls it from the other's hands, the disc is always going to go to the offensive player. So we'll see again, simultaneous, and just as it turned, as they landed and turned, Moore had a better grip, but Hoban's grip was still secure enough that he felt justified in calling a strip. That strip was upheld as Moore chose not to contest it, and so that's a point for Big. They go on the board, and a great display of spirit as well.
And Big really, they needed that points. Marvellous DC has really been pulling away a little bit. They've been chipping away at it, and really great to see Big recognizing that, coming out firing and putting that points on the board. We'll see if they can continue that momentum and get a strong defensive play here and to follow that up. Nice spacing in the middle. Ireland to Swinson.
Ireland again, Aston looking to close. Charlesworth comes back, Reisner makes a bid, gets up off the ground, closes the gap, threads it through.
Ooh.
Ireland tries the back heel tap. Patterson calling with hands on the near sideline, hoping for a big crossfield shot. It's Charlesworth.
And I love that. That's such a change up in the way Marvellous DC has been scoring points. I mentioned that they're absolutely capable as a team of scoring those quick, shorter passes of the short game as well as the big game. And really cool to see them varying that up, displaying just to us as the fans on the sideline that they're capable, again, of playing so many different ways. Charles was sneaking in the middle, finding that gap, knowing that Ireland has such an arsenal of throws in her back pocket that she'll be able to make it as long as the open player is there to receive it.
I think Becca Booth for Big had great defensive positioning there, but it does feel like a bit of a scramble when there's a lot of little swirling cuts, twirling towards freedom. Those cuts are just happening in, out, all around the place. And you've got to make a decision as a defender as to how committed you are to stopping each one. If there's a lot of players and there's a lot of crowding, you can trust a player 3 meters off to one side to pick up a defender an offender rather, if they move all the way through that space. And so Booth had great position. She was available to exert her sphere of influence in a dangerous zone, but Charlesworth managing to just slip through and find that open score to bring it back to a 2-point game.
Fulton with the disc, and it's a different style of defense there, of course. When a big throw goes up, you're relying on your speed, athleticism, ability to read the disc, and in those small spaces, the heads up, the awareness of where the offense might be and what's dangerous and what's happening. It's just such a different skill set and a different challenge.
Big sending their 4 female matching players into the deep space. Terry, Parsons, O'Connor, and Lynch.
We've got Titoff Smith with the disc, accompanied by Panaya and Ketty downfield.
And so Terry using those legs to stretch the deep space, taking Fulton with. Ketty not super active at the moment. He pushes wide to Parsons. She gets a hand to it, but it's not going to be enough.
Giving Marvellous DC another chance on offense. We're seeing a vertical stack. It's a little bit messy. Hopefully they can keep it clean of picks, which have been an issue in the past. The bid goes
throws
up!
around to Panaya.
Who does a backflip over the top. A little bit of contact. Good to see it's clean. The disc goes up! It looks like
pick was definitely called earlier on in the point. Just astounded by Boardman's ability to hang on to that disc right in front of the door of Joe Panaya's artisanal bakery, considering the rolls that he's bringing to the field.
The baker, Joe Panaya. Also,
that's the big left hand from Boardman to Sun for the score.
Great read.
Kudos up by 3, a possibly unnecessary spike, but having been 3 points down at the beginning of the game to come back to a 3-point lead.
I would like, great point, just first of all acknowledging, as you mentioned, those bids were incredible both offensively and defensively, brings a lot of excitement and energy to that point. I get stoked on that. It would be good to see the stat cleaned up a little bit. If that first point had been valid, you know, if it hadn't been a pick, as Terry was indicating, it's nice to see that, and we've seen just consistently some issues with spacing. One thing that Marvellous DC could do to clean that up a little bit is just provide a bit more space to each other in that vertical stack when they're set up that way.
Which I find just to piggyback off that, much like Joe Panaya did to Peter Boardman in that last pass, it's one of the things that we noticed really early on in the game, and you pointed this out, that we had 4 handlers back for the MDC Kudos space, 3 downfield cutters, and I think that's a really great way. If you've got those cutters who want to play tight, play jukes, and they've got those really aggressive defenders, that's a good way to avoid picks because you're leaving all of that space open for fewer players. As we're seeing things compress, the conditions are changing, figuring out what Big's defense is trying to take away, and Kudos are making his responses. We've seen that shift to a more vertical stack as Boardman puts the pull up.
As just a brief conditions commentary for everyone watching, it has started to rain a little bit. Now, how will this impact the play and how will this impact throws and catches, Blair?
In my opinion, I think it's probably going to give a little bit of advantage to Kudos. Wellington, known for their wind, but it's the central North Island and further north that tends to get all the rain. So Kudos player is going to be pretty used to wet discs. Does not seem to be slowing Big down as we see a great line drive to Halbin, who takes it right to the bread basket. There's a lot of baking going on, it seems, on the Big side as we push the far sideline for Terry. Coming through to Panaya, Whitlock, little wobbly on that reset, but he's going to chip one through to Sheridan.
The oven is getting hotter as the game draws on, also just drawing
There's
attention.
the big hammer, but it's somehow going to find the hands of Halbin. The way that whipped coming out of Sheridan's hands, I could have sworn that was going to carry further towards that far sideline, but hey, don't doubt a professional ultimate Frisbee player.
Don't doubt it. Also, Halbin cleaning up. He's the cleaning up after the shift is done. And really adding a lot of pressure and intensity. As I mentioned, the oven is getting hotter here. The score is brought to 9-11. Kudos still up, but Big really responding in kind. They're really relying on a lot of the, mammoth towering, not small throws, to score quite a few of their points, with Hoban as largely as the receiver. Yeah, so really up to Marvellous DC to recognize that, but nonetheless, the heat is getting hotter as we're seeing this such a close matchup. Marvellous DC starting to chip away and pull ahead, but yeah, Big responding in kind.
The vision as well. Even looking in that replay, it took me a couple of seconds to figure out where Peter Halbin was. I was thinking, I think there might have been a little bit of, just to see that cut developing that early and put that hammer up. I have no idea how he did it. So we're going to see a timeout called. Big currently down by 2. It's anyone's game. We're basically getting a repeat of the finals of the Tamaki Throwdown earlier on this year in the Northern qualifying tournament.
So I think really valuable right now, Marvellous DC probably considering how they can shut down those options. One thing that they were doing really effectively earlier was bracketing, especially with their female matching players. That is putting one player under on the open side and one player in the deep space. They are poaching 2 players, leaving them open, which is a massive risk when you have such strong throwers, such depth of throwers from Big on the other side of the field. But at the same time, it can really effectively shut down deep options as well as under options, clogging a lot of the deep looks that Big has been looking for, as we saw, point right there.
And so Big to come out on defense yet again. How are they going to shut down this very impressive MDC Kudos offense?
They've been sticking a lot with match defense, and that has been largely successful for them. Of course, with the score as it is, they could try something different, especially with a wet disc. Wet plastic is slippery. So match could continue to work. They've had a lot of pressure, especially on the handlers, or potentially at this stage in the game, throwing out a zone just to put a wrench in the gears, just to challenge the throwers to figure it out.
What a huge pull by Whitlock, but it touches down just out of bounds. It's going to be bricked by Yo. It's interesting that you mentioned that. I mean, we saw yesterday huge numbers of points where the defense was focusing on a zone. With the wind the way that it was, that was possibly the smartest decision-making you might see on an Ultimate field, even with players of this caliber. Now, with that wind settled down, a zone is going to leave players unoccupied. So it could be that that's the incentive behind this aggressive match defense. Yo with a big fake, but pushes to the far sideline for Waller.
Whitlock on the marks, huge marks there, but Joe especially here with his hands out, low center of gravity, but stepping back. They're really concerned about the hucks coming up, which are definitely risks from players like Waller with the disc, or Yo, who's striking up line.
And I think Whitlock may have got a touch on that one to drive it to the turf. Big with an opportunity here. They're in their offensive half. And it's hard to stretch a mark wide enough to cover Whitlock as he goes around. Double coverage. Moore and Reisner closing in. Moore with a fumble. Yo puts a shot up. Looking for Patterson. One hand, Patterson.
It was a bit of a twirly catch, but, I didn't doubt it for a second. It was safe in his hands. He keeps his hand up high with the disc, just showing that point that he scored.
MDC to hold on to that 3-point lead.
Now, what can Big do at this stage? It's great to see Marvellous DC has been scoring points in a variety of ways. They've largely been relying on those deep looks, but we have seen them working the disc, especially with the women on their team, having some really great flow and looking at those undercuts to score points. We really need Big to step up and kind of match that energy.
Yeah, I think the main thing that we're seeing, it's not that MDC's defense is driving those errors. It's definitely having an impact. We're seeing a lot of aggressive personal marking, but I think what we're seeing from Big is a lot of unforced errors, and if they can tidy those up, that's what it's going to come down to. A little bit of just perhaps stargazing, I think, from Big. They're kind of letting it get into themselves, letting them get into their own heads a little bit. We're seeing some players willing to and often in a position where they're forced to carry a lot of the pressure of victory on their own. But when you have a team of, I don't even know how many people, certainly 7 on the line who are all thinking in that mindset, it's a burden that should be a lot easier to share. So hopefully we're going to see the second half of this game put Big really spreading the load a little bit. We're seeing Terry to Parsons with a big shot. Halbin closing.
Looking again for Halbin.
Yes, he is. That's what we want to see to keep it a close game. Halbin putting a quick one on the board to make it a 2-point game again, and that's what we're going to see. It's the tighter offense. It's just little executional things, better decision making. When Big recognize the gaps in the MDC Kudos or just choose not to feel the pressure, it opens them up for plays just as clean as that one.
Just talking about that point there, I wanted to shout out to the pull, Chong rolling the pull, which snaked past a few players before it was finally put down. However, Big just right off to the races initially. Swing, sharp, crisp, fast throws before Parsons recognizes, again, the biggest threat in that deep space. In this game, Halbin, again, streaking deep and lays it all out to reel it in. What a beautiful point. We see, it looks like
Reisner with the disc for the pull.
Yeah, Reisner talking through the line there. I'm thinking it's probably strategic matchups, which is a smart decision. These players on both these teams know each other so well. They know their play styles, and while Big, as a relatively new club, again established this season, they know what to expect from this other team. They know what the matchups are, and at this point in the game, they need that to be intentional and strategic, player versus player.
And so it's
Yo looking deep.
Gonna rip one. Again, you see Swinson pushing deep. It's what you're going to go for.
Not quite in the end zone, but she's got it.
Dinsdale doing a great job of staying tight to the player, but it's going to go back to Charlesworth, to Patterson, driving up line for Charlesworth. One more time, marked by Staley. She's not going to let it go up line.
She's been dominating those give-and-goes all game. A hammer goes up, and unfortunately, Yo can't reel that in.
I mean, after Ryan Sheridan's fantastic hammer for the score earlier, who doesn't want to just try it out?
Also, just shout out Charles West. She's been commanding those give and goes. She's been involved in so many of the ones that MDC has been putting up. We're seeing bracketing again also on defense. As Big is off to the races. Panaya to Reisner.
Yeah, marked by Ireland. Low, but in the hands of Panaya. And I think that big wide cross shot was one of those ones that we maybe want to see less of from Big, as it's just not as safe an option. Reisner, super secure, and so a very, very great target. But it's just dialing in those unforced errors. Now, it's a 2-point game. If they can manage to secure it here.
One thing I'm really enjoying, the disc goes up. Yo Bids, Titoff Smith takes it into the end zone.
There we go.
Again, a much needed point. I'm so excited they scored that. I'm a fan of close games, whoever's down. At this stage, I'm supporting them. It's just such a close game, and I'm here for it.
And a great bid by Yo. Again, lots of layouts. We're seeing a lot of layouts from MDC. It doesn't really matter if their uniform gets dirty. It's nice and dark and blue. You're not going to see it.
Necessary for Tessa Swinson, as again, she's got that three-peat with the catch deep. Let's see that point one more time. Panaya pointing exactly where he wants his players to go, commanding the field there, looking for the swing to Whitlock.
And again, Waller just marking deep. He's trying to avoid letting Whitlock push into the deep space because he knows what a threat he is as a receiver as well. But in doing so, he let that cut develop right across the front of the disc, and Whitlock with a nice quick release, nice and low, curving around the bidding Yo straight into the hands of Tyler Titoff Smith for the score. It is a 1-point game. We are 75 minutes in.
We've got Big now on defense, looking to respond, continue the momentum, step on that train, the comeback train, choo-choo. Sheridan with the disc in hand. Again, we're playing to 15 today, folks, so there's only a small margin of points for the teams to make their mark on the field right now. Both teams hoping to pull away and keep that momentum going just a little bit stronger.
And again, just a huge testament to the intensity and grit that these teams are displaying. Big were up by 3 at 2 separate points in the game. Kudos managed to claw it back, take half, and then were up by 3 themselves. Now it's a 1-point game. Waller with the disc goes around Panaya to Swinson, marked by Staley. Charles Woods pushing deep.
Coverage, a lot of coverage, really pressuring the Marvellous DC cuts at this stage. The handlers, they're looking for options. We're seeing a lot of swings. They're struggling to find outfield, but Waller gets separation.
Panaya's closing, not fast enough. Kudos up by 2 now. The game is 13-11 to the side from the Northern region.
Such speed on both those players. But consistently we're seeing Marvellous DC just making just enough separation. Also props to the throws for putting it out into space. Regardless of your speed, if you have a little bit of separation from your defense, it's really challenging unless your defender is superhuman. It's really challenging just to make up that space, especially when you can run onto the disc. What a beautiful throw. Waller here just putting his body around it, making it even more challenging. If Panaya had the wheels to zoom up, still difficult to get the disc when Waller's just safely bringing it down, getting himself into position to make that point.
Huge play by Kudos and necessary.
The whole team on the field right now questioning if it's a timeout. It's not. The whistle goes, but all of Big is on the field listening to the plan. Really great to see. As Blair has said, and I will echo, there's 3 lines on the field. There's the O-line, there's the D-line, and the sideline can be such an influential part of a point. So really great to see Big, the entire team on the field, listening to the plan, listening to the force so they can echo. The field is spread. Players on the home side, players on the away side.
Are we going to see that same pull from Rory Moore? No, he decides for a more conventional backhand with a lot of outside edge. It's still going to touch down early and roll. And looks like there may be some confusion about the mismatch or possibly an offside. Not entirely sure what that signal was.
And Panaya with
so that is going to be an offside call. Just another little fun rule observation there for you at home as Big look to initiate with Waller. Whitlock streaking deep. It's going to be Titoff Smith. Marked by Kwok. He puts the shot up for Whitlock and finds him.
And that
nice and clean.
The first point that we saw with Lynch, the first point that, the second, Hoban scoring the first point of the game, but Lynch with the second, as they put the disc, it's so difficult to mark. When they're putting up the forehand, it floats over onto the break side. You can be in position as the defender, marking the open side. Let's see that one more time. But when the disc, after Titoff Smith catches it under, he's looking deep, sees the incredible receiver, the blue bomber. When it's floating to the break side, you can see defense is out of position, and it's not a knock on the defense at all because he's exactly where he needs to be. But it's just the perfect throw when it fades to the break side. It's such a challenging defensive play to make to stop that from turning into a point.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you think about the downward trajectory of that disc, and it's if the closer you are to the peak of that throw, the harder it is to make a legitimate play. I just want to give a shout out to Hamish Thornton, with whom I had the pleasure of playing on the most recent New Zealand Mixed Masters Ultimate Championships, the first time such an event was held in New Zealand. Yes, I'm old. Just to clarify what that crossed arm signal was at the beginning of that point, to signify offside. So the offensive players need to start the point with their toes on the line at the front of the end zone. The defense cannot have any part of their body crossing that line before the disc is released from the puller's hand. And so it was just a signal to indicate that that had occurred. The defense were over the line before the disc was released. But it's MDC on offense now.
And great to see Big has switched up their defense a little bit. They've been dominating. They've been doing so well with the match defense, but really excited to see them varying it up. Again, even if it's not the most successful, sometimes just throwing something different, making the offense have to unlock a different challenge. It looks like Marvellous DC here not flustered at all. They're not slowing down. Ireland with a massive bid to keep that disc alive.
Now, it's interesting to see as well. They've put Whitlock covering the deep space for Big, but we've got cutters like Tessa Swinson really pushing deep, and it makes you wonder, is he giving her too much room? He can make plays, but I think that after that collision with Chang earlier on in the game, he's probably going to be a lot more hesitant to make a big play against a female matching player, which is just safe, and it is respectful considering the size discrepancy. I think it's MDC are doing a really, really good job of making sure that their first look is downfield into the deep space.
Oh, and as you called it, Blair, I wanted to shout out, I actually think that was a really smart move still. Even though that resulted in a point for MDC, it was a really smart defensive move by Big to throw that zone. It didn't seem to slow down the momentum at all. They just were pass. The handlers were figuring it out. They were finding the open players. Nonetheless, it stops those deep options. With Whitlock in the deep space, even against a player like Swinson who dominates with those deep options. She's such a good receiver. It's still, I think, a really smart decision just to try something different and ensure that if a huck comes up, that it's going to be hotly contested. They're not a huck. Swinson with the point nonetheless, but a nice, easy open pass into the end zone. Great zone offense by Marvellous.
One thing that I really want to draw attention to is the fact that all of those first looks when the MDC players got the disc in that handler space, they were really looking forward for that long downfield shot, and it kept Whitlock out of the play. He had to stay back and be able to read to make a sort of a good coverage play, and in doing so it kept the defense a little bit on the back foot, which opened up those spaces for those 1, 2, 3 string of passes before opening up a great opportunity for Swinson to pull that one down right in the end zone. It's a third point of the game at least. That's a hat trick. Fulton with a great pull.
The pull, yeah, also interesting to point out, game to 15, if Marvellous DC can get this defensive play and score a point, that will be game. There's no room for error at this stage for Big.
Reisner making a great crossfield cut. The wind gusting up just there on that reset to try and find O'Connor. MDC could put it away right now with one good shot. Ketty aggressive on the defense, our art historian who doesn't buy fakes.
And the stack is still a little bit clogged, but great movement nonetheless. Fulton with the disc.
Dolan marked by Lynch. Lynch going all the way around. Boardman managing to slip past Panaya. A nice backhand comes around to Laylee Bender. Moore looking for a continuation cut, but the disc swings back the other way and back to the near side. It is going to be Moore to Boardman. Big fake to get a shift out of Panaya.
Marvellous DC is everywhere. They're having so many options coming out. You know, the defense, the match defense is slowing things down, working to slow things down, but Marvellous still is DC. Now they slow down. They're trying to find the open option, looking.
A Interesting choice, but a successful one as MDC close out the game 15 over Bigs 12.
What a game that was, Blair.
A huge game there. Great work by both teams. Huge emotions at play. Great intensity, great energy. These fantastic teams clashing together. I believe they were seeded first and second in their pool respectively. To see these heavyweights come at each other and really leave everything behind.
What a privilege to watch that game.
Are we going to see a rematch of this game later on? Is it going to go the same way? I think as we come to the conclusion of pool play, we've only got one more pool game left to stream for you. MDC Boat from Wellington facing off against the hometown heroes Credo.
Well,
we'll see what happens.
It was just recapping in the game. Big came out firing. They came out hot. They'd warmed up and they knew exactly what they wanted to do. Nonetheless, if we do see this matchup again in Blair, I wouldn't be opposed to that. That was such a fantastic game, such a privilege to watch. But if we do see it again, Big will come out knowing exactly. Again, these players know each other. They've played against each other. They're well familiar with play styles, but knowing what they need to improve on and what they need to fix up. So I think, you know, if we do see that matchup, it's anyone's game. Whoever wants it, who's ever driven, you know, is going to walk away with the win. Again, if that happens, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
But first, before we figure out whether or not we'll be lucky enough to see a rematch between MDC Kudos and Big from Wellington, we have one more pool play coming up for you very shortly, and then we've got some quarterfinal coverage for the second day of the 2023 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships Division 1 here at Bob Deans Field in ULTI.TV, Christchurch. Until the next one, my name is Blair Monroe.
I'm Kelsey Bielik.
Thank you so much to you at home for watching. Thank you to ULTI.TV for bringing you the very best coverage in the greatest sport in the world from the greatest athletes in the world here at New Zealand, Australia, and on those other countries that typically are lower on their happiness index list. Head on over to patreon.com/ULTI.TV. Give us your spare change. Help us bring you more of the very best sport in all the world. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back very soon.
Matewa.
What have they ever done for me?
ULTI.TV.